Hey guys, this is CG Animator. I'm gonna go by Derek from now on, just because I did the whole CG Animator thing when I was like 15, and I'd rather use my real name. My name's Derek Sesson. I'm a 3D artist for commercials, and I know I haven't done tutorials in a while, but I thought I'd start to slowly bring them back and give you guys a bit more professional grade tutorials. Now that since I've taken time off, I've gotten a lot better. I've worked at some more studios. I've learned from a lot of really, really great artists, and hopefully I can show you guys how to become better artists yourselves. For this is not a software specific tutorial. I'm hoping to do more of these where this is just sort of theory. You can transfer these skills hopefully just for this sort of series where I just do CG tutorials and not a Blender specific or Maya specific or anything like that. Um, Excuse me. For those of you who would like me to continue doing the Blender tutorials, unfortunately, I haven't used Blender in a really long time. What I use is Maya, primarily for my primary 3D software, and the only reason that is because it's not for any sort of software deficiencies or anything in Blender. Um, I love Blender still. I think it's an amazing program. The fact that it's free is amazing. But it's just that every studio that I work at, that I use to pay my bills and stuff, use Maya. And I'm not going to invest my time, which is pretty valuable to me considering that I get paid daily. So I'm not going to invest time into a program that I don't use in my day-to-day, that I use to bring money in. So I use Maya. It's the industry standard for now. When that changes, I'll change with it. But for you interested in learning Maya, stick around in the future. I'll be making Maya tutorials and more ZBrush stuff and Photoshop, maybe some After Effects and some Nuke compositing, stuff like that. For those of you who are only interested in Blender tutorials, it's not about the tool to get there at all. It's a bad artist who blames his tools on his bad art. It's about using whatever tools you have at your disposal to create great art, and I'm just using the tool that I know best. So if you have a problem with that, feel free to unsubscribe wherever you want. Because when I started doing ZBrush tutorials the first time, I stopped because I got a few comments saying people were unsubscribing because they were here for Blender tutorials, and that's just silly because it's all about the art. It's not about the software. These are just my software that I choose and that a lot of studios choose. But anyway, today this tutorial will be on creating pretty realistic, it's not completely photoreal, but semi-realistic skin from scratch. I didn't want to do a tutorial where I show how to just project on skin, because we're not painting anything. For those of you wondering, I had the same issue when I started. I always thought, how do you create realistic skin and get it to look like this? This is a texture tutorial. This is not a shader tutorial. This is how we create the image for the texture in various programs. I had no idea, and now that I do, I feel like this is a pretty good thing to share. For those of you wondering I might have the painting skills for that, I barely painted any of this. This is just smart-ish image manipulation, and I will go through that with you. So first things first, we're going to go to the model. I'm not going to go through how I modeled this, how I did the stubble or the eyebrows. Yeah, let's get in closer so you guys can see, just in case you guys don't have full screen or anything like that. You can see we have nice sunspots and really nice breakup of the speck pattern with the normal map, and got some nice subsurface scattering stuff, but for the most part we're getting most of our nice color stuff from our color map. And I'm going to show you guys how I made the color map, the speck map. This is a skin shader, so I used a subdermal map too. I'll explain what that is later, and normal map, displacement map, color map, speck map. I think that's all I used. And I'll show you how I textured these eyes too, just because this is a texturing tutorial. I'll show you my light setup. I'm not going to explain my light setup. I'll just show you and sort of explain what it's doing. I'm not going to show you how to set it up or why I set it up certain ways too much, because this is primarily texturing. So first things first, let's jump into ZBrush. This is the model I made. I made this about 3 years ago. It took me about an hour and a half. This was just a quick sketch. The model itself isn't great. I just really liked the design. I still like the design. That's why I chose to create it like this. You can see there's a pretty substantial difference if you look at this shaded versus this. And that's because I didn't do most of the texturing in here. I used this for the sculpting. So what I did was I took this model. If you look at the wireframe here, it's just god awful. God awful. What I used to retopologize this, and the process of retopology is to recreate the topology but keeping all of the forms so that we have it animatable and or referenceable or renderable, because this is not really renderable right now. I mean it is, but it wouldn't be good because everything's stretched and it's bad and it's just awful. What I used is this right here, ZRemesher. Basically what you do is you choose ZRemesher guides here, you draw your guides of where you want the topology to flow roughly, and you hit this button and it just creates this amazing new topology. I actually didn't save the ZBrush file because all I did was export the OBJ once I was finished. I'll show you guys how that turned out here in Maya. I'll be doing Maya tutorials in the future. I might do a few basics just to get started and then go up and up in difficulty. But you can see here the topology is really, really nice. I didn't have to edit any of this. It just created this from scratch, with the guides that I gave it, which is awesome. Is this production ready? Absolutely not. It's not symmetrical. This is the fact that it's not doing the same thing on both sides would mean the rigger would have to paint both sides instead of being able to mirror it and blah blah blah. There's a lot of stuff wrong with it. But is it good enough for my just at-home render that I just did in my spare time? Absolutely. It was more than good enough. Jesus. Okay. So anyway, I used this now, and then once I retopologized it with ZRemesher, I reprojected all the detail. So I had my new clean mesh. Next thing I did was I upped the poly count to about 2 or 3 million. I think I went into Lightbox here, to the alpha palette here. I added leather skin and one of the bumpy skins. I can't remember which, but I already loaded the leather skin in here. And what I did was I just kept it on standard, went to stroke, added in the stroke I went to spray. I added that leather alpha there, and I turned the Z intensity to about 9 or 8. And then let me go somewhere else here. And all I went and did was just sprayed on the leather and the pores. And just went through here, just gave it this breakup. It took me about 2 minutes. That's all I did. Is just went through and did it. If you look here, the normal map that I extracted from that created this really, really nice breakup here in the specularity. For those of you who are wondering what a normal map or displacement is, I will show you. Let's go into our texture palette, my texture folder that I created here, and let's go through all the textures I extracted from this guy here. Number 1 is the displacement. Number 2 is the normal map, which it's hard to see, but if I zoom in really close here, you can see there's all this fine skin detail, which is great. And number 3, I extracted the color map, and let me show you guys what that looks like. Here, if I turn on Poly Paint and go into Skin Shade 4 so that you can see it better, it's a super basic Poly Paint. I painted this 3 years ago before I knew much about texturing, but it was a good starting point for me. You can see it's just really pink, and there's some basic highlight stuff, like I just added a lighter color here, a lighter color here. I darkened in his eyes a little bit and darkened in this area here a little bit, but that's basically it. Very simple, very, very simple. Let's go to the image again. So that's all this looks like here. So let's jump into Photoshop, and we can dissect the PSD I made with all my layers. I'm not going to create all this from scratch. I'm just going to show you layer by layer what I did and how I did it. Okay, if we look in here, you can see we have a lot of detail. There's lots of skin imperfections and skin stuff and moles. I added veins and occlusion, and it looks nice. Let's go through each layer and see how I did that. So first things I did was add the texture map. That's it. Just added it in here. Next thing, I fixed his eye because when I rendered it, it seemed very, very dark, and that's because I just painted it weird. So what I did was I added a levels adjustment layer, and all an adjustment layer is that any layer underneath the adjustment layer is affected by whatever you do. The levels, the hue saturation, the brightness contrast, whatever. I turned that on, and then if you look here on this piece here, I added a mask, and if I control click that, it'll highlight the mask, and I just masked it to only affect the eye. That's all I did. Next thing I did, I added the displacement map on top with an overlay on 43% opacity. And the reason I did that, I'll show you what it looks like by itself. The reason I did that was overlay is sort of just an additive mode that adds all of the darks to the dark and the whites to the white. And the reason I do this is just because it makes your color map have form. Because if you are lucky enough to have a sculpt with your texture, you can add this on top. I usually do this with my sculpts and stuff that I do in production, and it just adds a lot of dimensionality to your texture map for free. You already have it with your displacement map. And I just turned it to 43% opacity because it's just way too strong on 100% opacity. Okay, next thing I did, took the normal map. Let me bring that in here. I can show you guys exactly what I did. Turn this off here. Okay, first thing I did, I took the normal map. If you guys want to bring an image in and have it fit exactly in, you press V for the move here. If I just move it in here, you see it's offset. It's not directly fitting. These are all 2K, meaning 2048 by 2048. So what you want to do is you just want to hold this and then hold shift when you bring it in. It'll just fit exactly how you want it to. So what I did was, if you go to this layer, I set it to multiply and different opacity. Now, let me explain multiply and screen. Those are arguably the two most important blending layers, at least with this sort of thing. What multiply does is it looks at all of the white values and it gets rid of them and leaves only the black values. If you have a value of 100% white, it will be 100% transparent. If you have a value of 100% black, it will be 100% opaque. 50% gray is 50% opacity. So what I did was, we have all this really nice skin detail. How could we transfer that over into our color map for free? Very simple. All we're going to do is press Control U to bring up our hue saturation, and we're just going to turn the saturation off. Another way to do that, which is how I do it, is Control Shift U. Just gets rid of all the saturation. Leaves me with this grayscale. Now what I did was set it to multiply and gave it a 57% opacity. I have a bug where when I use opacity, sometimes it'll give me these weird streaks. So let me just, I wonder if Phil will do it. No. But anyway, the main problem here, if we look, we have, let me put this back to normal. We have this 50% gray, and like I said before, 50% gray means 50% transparency. I don't want that. I want the white parts to be there. I want the black parts to be there. I can do without this gray in-between stuff. So what I did was, if I go to multiply, I'm going to go to levels, or let me show you normal, and then I'll show you with that. You can see our levels. We have all of this gray, and these are our only actual color information here. We're going to bring this to the middle here. These are our midtones. Bring this up, and then we'll bring our midtones back down. Bring our darks down, and we're just going to do this until we have white and black only. I just did it roughly there. Set it to multiply, and it's better. It's not darkening it as much. So what I did was, delete that. Set multiply at 57. Let me set it to 1. What I did was I just permanently applied a levels to it, so it looked like this. And then I also applied a levels because I get that streaky issue there. One thing you can do is you can just mess with the black value until everything's white. When it's in multiply, it doubles as a transparency, and I have to do that sometimes because of that weird bug. Anyway, next thing I did, let me turn off the normal map underneath it. I added this very subtle skin here, and this is just in the texture map. This isn't in the bump. This isn't in the normal map. And the way I did this, let me show you. If I merge the two, it gives this nice convincing skin pattern without and with. The way I did that is very simple. Let me go to my textures. I downloaded this texture online. I just typed in like skin texture or something. Alright. All I did was scale it until it looked a good scale. I held Alt and move it around. That's how you duplicate layers. If you hold Shift, it will snap it to an axis instead of just being free. Did that, and then Control E I used to merge down, meaning when I duplicated it, there were two layers. Control E will merge one of the layers directly down, so I have two. So I just created this. I just kept tiling it over and over and over again until I had this very repeatable texture. It's the tile is very obvious. I got rid of the hue and saturation, just the saturation. I set it to soft light, I think. Yeah, just because it gave me this nice effect. Sometimes I'll literally just go to normal and just scroll down until I see a nice effect that I like. So soft light, and then I set the opacity down because it was a little strong. That's it. Next thing, I added this sort of subtle, not too subtle if you look from before and after, but I wanted it to look like there are veins underneath the surface. So I found this nice rock texture here, this guy, and if I show you guys, this is in soft light too. If you see, I literally did the same exact thing, tiled it, set it to soft light, turned down the opacity. Now, I did a test render, and you can see if you look at your own skin is not this pink. And the fact that we use a subsurface layer, this isn't our final color. Our final color, if you look, is closer to this. But the fact is we have subsurface scattering, meaning light is penetrating this, and so we can get veins and stuff like that, and it feels more like there's depth. So in order to get that, I used a subdermal color pass here underneath the skin, and it's the same exact texture. It's just I just changed the hue to be more saturated, and then I changed the hue to be a little more on the orangish red side, so I can get fat and these dark veins and the blood cells and stuff like that. Give a really nice result. But especially when I mixed this with this, the result was way too pink. So I had to make it look more like skin. So here are 4 adjustment layers. I tweaked the levels, made it a little deeper, a little more saturated. This is brightness, made it brighter. So the two together, I'll show you. This just makes it look a lot, more saturated. Changed the hue because it was too pink. So just moved it over towards the yellow. And then afterwards I tweaked the levels. So now, to make it a little more pale. So now if you look, it looks a lot more like just if you took and dried skin a bit, which looks good. We're almost done here. Next thing I did, I wanted there to be separation in his lips. So all I did was created this super simple, I just painted this inner color here. I gave it an inner shadow with this, if I show you what that looks like. Inner shadow here with this color at normal, turn the opacity down until it looked good, and then all I did was set to multiply at 15% opacity. That's it, darker lips, very easy. And the reason I gave it that that inner shadow, which basically was just giving it a nice rim so it wouldn't just be so abrupt. Next thing, veins. Very simple veins, turned out very well. I will show you how I created those. I found this vein pattern. Most of the textures I get are just off of Google and or cgtextures.com. I just added this in here. First things first, scale it. Now, the next problem is you can see there's an obvious cutoff point. I grab the eraser. If you want to change the size of your eraser, the brackets on your keyboard do that nicely. I turned down the opacity. During this project, I lost my tablet pen, so I had to use a mouse. But that was fine since you can see most of the things we're not painting. So all I do is I'll go with a low opacity mouse. Just go along the edges here. I think I just completely got rid of this portion here. But anyway, so you'll notice here, You'll notice here if I go to the veins, it's on normal with 100% opacity, even though it's super see-through. And that's just because what I did was, first things I did, press Control U, go to Colorize, turn up the lightness, turn up the saturation. Oh wait, wrong ones. Okay, put this above it here. Whatever, it doesn't matter. But colorize, turn up the brightness here, turn up the saturation, and I found a nice like blue. And then made sure it looked a nice dark, deep blue that I could use around there. Next thing I did was turn down the opacity until it merged quite nice. Okay, and then I got the move tool with V, held Alt. All I did was just move it around to where I wanted it. Get rid of my other veins here. And then I merged it down. And you'll notice that when I merge things down, everything goes back to normal. I also think I set it to multiply. Just for the heck of it. Or overlay maybe? Yeah, I set it to overlay, it looks like. Because you can see overlay makes it look a lot more integrated. Overlay. And let's up the opacity. Anyway, merge those down, and you can see it changes the opacity to normal. I don't think I did an overlay actually, but whatever. When you change the opacity of something and then merge it down, it turns the opacity back to normal. So what I did was I just scaled and moved them all around, and then once I wanted them to be a little less obvious, I just went through and clicked with a low opacity brush to have points to make certain points seem deeper than others, and blah blah blah. So there's our veins. Nice effect. And now the thing that made it look, gave it most of its realism for me at least, especially you can see here, are these moles. The moles just brought it together for me, the sunspots, whatever you want to call them, the freckles. I especially like how it turned out up here and around here. I'll explain how I did the stubble too. I'm not going to get into it, I'll explain it. Let's open Photoshop back up. The way I did that was also very simple. I found this. I just typed in freckles or skin moles, Google. Found this nice image. So what I did was, if we look at the blending layer up here, it's on soft light, right? So if I turn that to soft light, you can already see it does a nice job of blending stuff in. So what I did was, let me turn off my moles here. I just tweaked the levels, Control L, until it seemed to pretty much just blend in here. Alright, so okay. Now the problem is you can see the outer layer. Also, it's saturating the under image. So what I did was I got rid of all the saturation with Control U. It's a lot better. We can tweak the levels one more time to make it a little deeper for the moles. Okay, that's better. I hit the erase tool with the low opacity. Got rid of all these edges. Okay, so now we have a nice mole pattern. So now, scale down, dupe it 4 times, get this repeatable texture. One thing I did, clicked in a few spots to make it not so obvious, and voila, great. So now we'll go through, scale, duplicate it over here, rotate it, and that's all I did over and over and over again until we got this. And if I show you this, you can see it's pretty obvious, see? But with soft light, really, really nice effect. And that's it for the skin. Now, if I wanted to, when I wanted to turn to the subdermal, all I did was press Control. I just saved it. Sorry. I press Control A to select everything, and if you go to where can I? There should be a way to show you how to copy merged. meaning it's going to copy the existing image as one flat layer. So I did that, pressed Control N, created a new texture, pasted this section. Then I just created a few adjustment layers, and the only reason you create adjustment layers is that it sort of keeps the history, so you can get rid of it if you want. Tweak the levels to be like a little deeper. Another one, hue saturation, lightness, hue, saturation, maybe another levels. That's it. So if we look over at our subdermal, obviously I spent a little more time on this one, but that's all I did was tweak the levels. I just didn't want anything to be blown out. That's it. Okay, so now let's look at our skin spec. All I did was create, I just used the normal map, I think, and I used the normal map, applied the displacement map on top so that it would give me, highlight some of the areas that were out, get rid of some of the areas that were in. See, I painted some of this stuff myself, but not actually painted. I just used like the skin, one of the skins, and tweaked the levels to make it black and white, and then just put it in areas. It's not perfect at all. It's pretty bad actually, but it worked. It looked fine. Just something to make it not perfect. Just something to break it up. I should have made his lips a little more glossy, but when I rendered it, I liked that they weren't the center of attention. Okay, and I think that's all the maps that I used. Okay, let's get into his eye texturing real quick, and then I'll show you the breakdown of the 3D scenes and the breakdown of how I created his stubble and his eyebrows. So if we look at his eyes, it's hard to see, but if you look from far away, they just look nice. They look better than just a flat color. I'll show you how I did that. First of all, let me show you what his eyes look like as models. So if we go in here, first off, you can see his eye isn't a perfect sphere. It's out. And this is just the cornea. Not the cornea. Yeah, actually I think the cornea. It's the transparent part on top of the eye. So let me move that away. This is the actual eye. Here's the white part, also known as the sclera, the iris, the pupil, and then the transparent part that refracts light and reflects. All this other stuff doesn't have any reflection. It's just diffuse, it's just color, and then this guy is just transparency, refraction, and refraction being that it warps the eye a little bit because it's being seen through, and the reflection to pick up the these nice highlights here. So you can see the way it's built here. It's just the rest of the stuff is just a little bit tinier than this, and then the rest is just built with a sphere pretty simply. So now if we look at the UVs, we can look at the UVs here in Photoshop. Do not save that. Do not save this. Let me open up my eye PSD here. If I turn on, I did this just because, you know, who knows what I'm going to do with it in the future. It's nice to have an eye texture. Here's his iris. Here's one half, the front half of his of the white part, the sclera, the back part, and the pupil. So let's break this down one by one. First of all, I downloaded a few textures. I just typed in eye texture just to see what was existing. I really didn't like this iris part because the reflection was built in, and you never want to build in reflection unless it's like for a really low poly game or something, or like low quality game. So what I did was I liked this white part, gave me sort of free vein texture. It worked out great too. So what I did was I took that, and then I took these two iris textures that I found online. I thought they looked interesting, and I merged them together until I found something that worked. So I'll show you how I did that step by step. Number one, let me keep on the UV so you can see how I'm doing this. Number one, I painted out I just made it white where the iris stuff was before, and just fit those to be perfectly right here. Next thing, added some levels and brightness just to make it a little more, just a little wider, you know, since it is kind of cartoony. Next thing, I just made a black sphere here for the pupil. Now, first thing I did, just took one of the textures, overlaid it on top, normal. On top of that, I set the next one to hard light. If you zoom in real close, and I get rid of this now, it gives me these green speckles, which I thought looked cool, but by itself right now it didn't look cool. But it's a start, so you can see a pretty big change. Next one, I added darken, and I added the same one. I just duplicated it again on top, set to darken, and set the opacity down. And this got rid of some of that effect a little bit, but then by itself it looks pretty different. So I just added that on top to get rid of that effect a bit, but I still like that it was giving me this pattern. And then I added the other one again on top one more time, hard light. You can see if I didn't do that, it keeps this blue too much. And I really liked how this turned out. This looks really nice and just lots of contrast. Next thing I did, levels, hue saturation, and levels, just to make it a little more brighter. One thing I really like when I look at a lot of cartoon and Pixar stuff is they always have their eyes always look like they glow. And so what I did was, all I did for that was I just painted really basically just this soft white ring around the center with just a soft brush set to white, and then I just set it to soft light and 51% opacity, and gave me a nice little glow here. Next thing I did, I noticed that you can see here if you look at the UVs, the texture ends before it hits black. So there's a hard transition to black, and it looked really fake. So what I did was I created a if we just move this out the way, just a sphere around here, just around this whole thing, and then I added an outer glow and made it black and just brought it out a little bit so that there was this nice transition here. And that's it. That's all I did to create these textures. There's nothing wrong with just taking textures offline and tweaking them to be your own. So now let's add the body again. Let's talk about the shaders very quickly. I used V-Ray. Really great piece of software. I used this program, this whole project here that I did to learn V-Ray just a little bit better. So let's open up our node editor for shaders called Hypershade. Okay, here is the texture that I used, a V-Ray blend material. And the reason it's a blend material is that I have my subsurface scattering here, and I have another material here. And the material that's on top, that's sort of, it's like layers in Photoshop, like we were just talking about. What this one does, it has the speck map that in the reflection color here, defining where the speck goes. And the reason I have it on top is so that it just gives me a lot more control, and it just gives it a nice sheen on top, because I set the mode in blend to additive, so it just sets everything together on top. So what I did was set it to the diffuse color. You see if I set it to white, it's not great. So I just set it to black so that it would completely not consider any of the black stuff, because usually 1 is opaque and 0 is transparent. So it just gives me the reflection. I set the amount to 0.35 because I don't want it to be too much. The glossiness to 0.8. If you keep the glossiness at 100%, you'll notice that the highlight here goes away, and because 100% glossiness in V-Ray means completely reflective, and I didn't want that. I wanted it to have highlights. I should have used Fresnel, and Fresnel is a different topic, but anyway. And another thing I did was I put in the normal map into here as well, or not as well, I didn't put it in over here, but putting the normal map on here. Oh no, I set it as a bump map actually, just because the normal map by itself on the skin shader, I remember now, was not strong enough. So what I did was I just put it in as a bump here and set the bump to 1.5, and it gave me this result here. Now if we look at the fast subsurface scattering node, I put the diffuse, the main skin color that I showed you guys how to build, in here. Diffuse just means like color without any sort of lighting or specular or anything. It's just pure color. That's what a diffuse map is. The diffuse amount was only 0.3, meaning that everything else was left up to the subsurface map, which I showed you guys. And then I set the scatter radius to 2. And what that means is, here in Maya, each one of these units is a centimeter. So this is about kind of real world scale. Unfortunately, I scaled it too late. I didn't bake the scale in. I scaled it post. So all of my lights had to be super high because the scale was off, because everything is super scale dependent in V-Ray. But that means that the scatter radius is set to 2 centimeters. It's going to penetrate, all the lights that I have in my scene are going to penetrate this model no more than 2 centimeters, because I didn't want it to be too waxy. When it goes in too deep, like a candle, because candles go very, very far, it starts to look waxy. And then if you look here, I put my normal map right in here. So let's look at our lighting setup here. And I'll turn on the hair too. So here are our lights. I have quite a few lights, too many. It took an hour to render this, and that's just because I'm new. I'm kind of new to V-Ray, and I'm still learning how to get the right effects just with a few lights. But for now, I needed this many lights to get this. It was great practice. So the first thing I have is a dome light, meaning that it's just sending light from everywhere. And into this, I piped in an HDRI. An HDRI is a 32-bit image that you can use to light your scenes. I will explain this in a later tutorial when I get into linear lighting and linear color space and all that stuff. But for now, it's just I have an HDRI. It's just like an HDRI of outside with the sky and stuff. I set this very, very low to 0.5, and that's it. And that's just to give me ambient color. I actually didn't use Final Gather for this. And Final Gather being, it's like global illumination, where it sends up points into the scene. It picks up your HDRI and things like that in your scene, gets the color and light information from it, and it lights your scene kind of. I didn't use that. I just used this dome light for the base underneath. Here is my key light, meaning the main light to illuminate him. I'll show you guys here. The main light coming from here to illuminate all of this, not this highlight here, just all of this stuff here. Alright? This light here, this is no light whatsoever. If you see here, affect diffuse, it's not affecting the lighting. I only wanted this to affect specular and reflections, because when I rendered it, I wasn't getting any of this nice these highlights here. It wasn't showing me. I needed that to show me that you could see all of this nice breakup that I added in the model. There's no point in adding it if you can't see it. So I just added that to give me more reflection. So sometimes you can add lights just to add specific things. This light here, this is my main rim light. If you look here, very harsh light, and what this is for, basically what we're doing, one of the main things about lighting isn't just giving your model light, it's about you're sculpting the forms with light. You can see all of these shapes much, much better because of all the highlights and this rim light and this light here and this here and these shadows here and this here, this light here. It's just we're sort of forming our model with our lights. Now, next one is the final one. I ended up not using this one. I turned this, if you look here, see I disabled this. But this is just a sphere light, which it's just very soft. These are, by the way, these are V-Ray rectangle lights. These aren't the traditional Maya area lights. You can see how high the intensities are. But now this one, I just set it to this nice warm color to the side here. And you can see, like I said, this gives a very soft light. So if we look here, it's nice and soft here, a nice soft sort of glow here, and this is very harsh. Oh, and then the final one I added. Oh, and also this one also gave me nice, these nice little tiny speck highlights in his eyes. And then there's also this top light up here that just gives me this nice highlight right here, and also helps me bring in shadows. It gives me shadows in here because the light's coming down. And that's kind of it. This rim light is a little blue, if you can see that. But anyway, now let's talk about his stubble. The way I modeled, or the way I rendered his stubble was very simple. I just added it on here. I'll show you how I made it. But in terms of shaders, it's literally just dark. It takes a second. Sorry. It's just, let me select his eyebrow. Yeah. All has the same shader. There's no bump maps, there's no anything. It's literally just this really dark color right here. It's just like a deep, deep brown. And that's it. So the way I did that is here, if we look in, I used fiber mesh. I made this in ZBrush. I will be doing fiber mesh tutorials in the future. You can look up fiber mesh tutorials. Sorry, Jesus, yourself. I'll do some in the future, but this is what it looked like coming out of ZBrush. I could have done a better job with the directionality, and also it's a little too consistent in the render, but I'm fine with it. Consistent in the length is what I mean. And that's everything. And then I composited this all together in Nuke. That's an entirely separate subject. We don't need to get into that. Not until further in the future. But let's go to our final. And this is what it resulted in, and this is how we used everything together to make this image. And I hope you found this informative. I'll be doing more just CG tutorials, not program-specific tutorials like this in the future. You could do all of this in any other program that supports layers for painting, like in Photoshop, and supports V-Ray or any sort of lighting setup in any other program. Like you could do this in Cycles and Blender probably. This is just how I did it. It's interchangeable between programs, not specifically the super down technical stuff, but everything else is fine. I hope you enjoyed this. I'll be putting a link to this full res image so you can analyze the texture yourself, or analyze the result of it. I'll put it in the comments or in the description. And that's it for this tutorial. I hope you guys enjoy it, and please, if you have any suggestions for tutorials in the future, feel free to leave a comment or send me a message. Thanks guys, and I'll see you next time.